pencils.
Here he is. Just in time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Under the wire.
Can I have just a
We
little,
are live.
a tad little room? I'll move this over. Here you go. It's okay.
And we are live.
Great. So stay standing, Barry.
I will. Proceed.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Trustee Cheney.
Here.
Trustee Foster. Here. Mayor Newhart.
Here.
Trustee Fleur.
Here.
Trustee McKnight.
Here.
Stephen Gallagher.
Present.
And this evening is a work session as we're reviewing short-term rentals. And we are at a point where we are pretty close to the line, I think. And Steve, you gave us kind of the final red line copy,
What I hope is.
what you hope is. So we will see. That's what it's for. So if you want to start us out, Steve, I would appreciate that.
Sure. We, at the last work session, went through the short-term rental law, and there were a couple of kind of big-ticket issues which were discussed. The first one was that the board wanted to have a provision under which property is either owner-occupied for 6 months or occupied by an agent, a representative agent, for 6 months, except in the CD district, I believe, CB district. And in the CB district, there would be neither an owner occupancy nor agent occupancy requirement. The other issue was what to do about the response distance, I don't know what you want to call it, the distance in residence away from the rental property that an agent would need to be. And you'd written to the police department, they'd said, heck, an hour would be fine if you know, they thought, but they said if you want to be tighter about it, probably half an hour would be sufficient. And so the board's direction was to change from, I think we had 15 miles or whatever it was in there, to being within a travel time of half an hour.
Okay.
And so I did those two things, and I tightened up a few other items. If you want, I'll walk you through it, or we could just jump into discussion, whatever you.
Can I, just a quick note, for the 30 minutes travel time, I actually have a proposed adjustment to that, because what I was thinking was that it would be being able to respond in person to the property within 30 minutes of being notified of the need to do so, not 30 minutes travel time. So that they're able to be on the property within 30 minutes of being notified of the need to do
I don't
so.
understand what's the distinction.
One is they live 30 minutes travel time away. The other is actually when they are there. So if you're not responding, if you're not on site within 30 minutes of being notified of the need to do so, then what help is it that you're living 30 minutes away? So that's the idea.
You can't expect people to never leave 30 minutes of distance from the property. I mean, they're gonna be home most of the time, but I mean, they can't go to Albany, I mean, they can't go to New Jersey, I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's that. It's that the agent is able to respond to the property within 30 minutes of being notified of the need to do so. So like if you have a property manager,
There's an issue.
the property manager, like it's not always a single human being. They have a representative that is able to respond. That was, anyway, that was
No, I
my,
understand why you want it done. Clearly, it doesn't do a lot of good if somebody lives 30 minutes away, but in fact they're in Canada or something and they can't respond, you know, within 30 minutes. But as a practical matter, I'm not sure how you could make it so that there'd always be somebody 30 minutes away from the property, 24/7. I mean, how's that
yeah,
work?
it's not the idea that they're physically unable to respond because they're in Canada. It's that they don't have the need to be responsive just because they're, like the operative word here is that we're 30 minutes away versus able to respond and be on site within 30 minutes. Those are just, to me, those are two different meanings.
They are, but I don't understand how you could go with the former. I mean, somebody can never leave the village of Warwick if you have a short-term rental?
Well, I think it kind of drives the point. If you are a property owner or an agent and you have someone staying, then you should be mindful to be
You have an
have a backup.
agent that is able to be there within
case
30 minutes
there's
of
an
being
issue.
notified of the need to do so.
So for example, if I was the agent and I knew I was going to go on a week's vacation somewhere, I would then have somebody to fill in my,
But they'd have to make them the representative agent for the property owner at
But
that point.
the representative agent could be a company. If they have
I
a
thought
property
of that.
owner.
I suppose that's true.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not, yeah. And so if you have someone staying at that property, then there should be a mechanism to ensure that you're able to be on site within 30 minutes of being notified of the need to do so. Like if the pipes have burst or
Understood.
something like that.
I understand. I was thinking in terms of, Mr. Joe owner, or Miss Sally owner, whatever, and I hire, my cousin or perhaps some handyman who I know to be my agent, and if they live within 30 minutes, most of the time, they should be able to get there. But is it possible that they won't? I mean, is it possible that they work in, I don't know, Beacon or, Wurtsboro or something like that, and then they can't get, yeah, that could very well happen. But if you had a corporate entity that would have somebody available on call, I mean, it could be multiple people, that would work.
Yeah, and the issue that I have with the current language is it doesn't specify that, right? So it does,
Doesn't.
so for example, somebody could be like, well, I'm 30 minutes away, but I don't actually have to be there,
That's
like,
exactly how they could be.
that's how it's
Think a
written,
little
and
attitude.
that's why I have an issue with it. I'm sorry?
It's attitude, maybe, but they could very well take that position.
Right, and so that could be the argument. But if we say that you need to be, respond in person within X amount of time of being notified of the need to do so, then that changes the meaning and it's more aligned with the intent.
All right, so,
It is more aligned with the intent.
do you have thoughts on changing the wording, or are you just bringing up
Yeah,
the issue?
yeah, I wrote, the wording that I changed was, the first piece is after registered resident agent, and I don't know if that needs to have the word resident. I was suggesting that we remove that, so it's registered agent. But an agent of the property owner who is able to respond and attend to the site within 30 minutes of being alerted to an issue, or being alerted of the need to do so.
Who is able to respond and attend?
To the site, yes.
And attend to
The,
the,
either property or site,
all right, we'll figure that out.
within 30 minutes of being notified of the need to do so.
Within 30 minutes.
Because the interesting thing about the police is, the police will get there, they'll get there within a certain amount of time, and then they're attending to the issue and any safety needs. And so that it would make sense that, like, they're gonna neutralize any, safety threat or whatever, and so it's okay that maybe it would take even a little bit longer, maybe. But if the pipe has burst, or if, the police are not gonna come if, there's something like that, and it's cold, or, and the heat isn't working, or whatever. So that's the idea, is
So it
the
would
30
be-
minutes.
I'm sorry, let me cut you off there.
No, it's fine, that's all.
An agent of the property owner was able to respond and attend to the subject property within 30 minutes of being informed, or is it just of the need to do so?
I said of being notified of the
Of
need to
being
do so.
notified, pardon me.
Of the need,
Being
Carly?
Yeah,
Notified of the need to do so, and who is identified as the owner's registered, we're gonna get rid of resident, registered agent in in the short-term rental permit application.
yeah.
That works?
And
That
then
would-
also under the definition of owner occupied, you have resident there, I would take that out as well. The other thing I would question is the word consecutive. I don't know if they need to live there for 6 consecutive months in the
I
calendar
was
year.
questioning that myself. I don't.
I would
wouldn't
take,
want
I would suggest striking that because, you know, could be a snowbird who's here.
3 and 3,
Right.
4 and 2. No,
Right.
I hear you. Is that what the board wants?
Yeah, I'm okay
That's
with
fine.
that.
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Okay.
I had another,
Well, I'm sorry, going back to the owner occupied, what were you, say that again, Tom, just,
me,
yeah,
let me go back and find it for a second.
registered, resident, agent?
So we're taking out the word resident
Resident,
to match
okay.
the other one.
Okay.
Right, registered agent,
Okay,
resides for not less than 6 months in the calendar year. I think we just take out consecutive. I think the spirit of it is 6 months in the aggregate, right, in a given year.
right.
So the way I interpret that is, the record owner or the resident agent resides for not less than 6 months. So the owner could never be there.
But it's,
Oh, as long as the resident agent is there.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
But has to live on the premises for
Yes.
6 months.
It's registered. Now, if the resident agent is a company, as we just discussed, that kind of creates an issue.
They have to have a representative. It would be
so,
the, yeah.
so good point, Barry. I think that it's, the 6 months should be applied to the owner occupied, not the agent. And this kind of reads like it,
That's what you wanted. You wanted it either or.
That's what we had discussed last time, Tom. Remember that the area outside of the central business district, the intention was, you had wanted it to be the, sorry, I shouldn't word it that way.
The idea is that a resident agent would reside there.
Yeah, and that gets us around that dormant
Thank you, you're
commerce
right.
clause issue because it doesn't exclude unfairly an out-of-state property owner. Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out as a practical matter how that works. If you hire a corporate entity with multiple persons, it could be a partnership, whatever, as your registered agent, and now you're going to have them occupy your house 6 months. I mean, leasing is leasing. I guess it doesn't really matter. It's just kind of a, I don't think I've ever heard of a setup like that. That's why I'm kind of raising an eyebrow about it.
Why do we think it gets us past the dormant commerce clause?
The thinking there was that if you say you have to be owner occupied for 6 months, if you're somebody who lives out of state, you can't use short-term rentals in the village because you live out of state. However, if you have your agent occupy the premises, you buy a house and you're gonna have your agent occupy it for 6 months out of the year, it's not just short-term rentals, 6 months it's for long-term rental, then you can live anywhere and you can do it because you can contract for an agent who you follow.
Like an example too would be like your niece or something, like a family member that isn't necessarily the property owner, but they could be the owner's agent.
It seems to me we're precluding out-of-state ownership by this because nobody's gonna wanna let somebody else live there for 6 months, whether they collect a rent or not, in order to just be able to rent it for 6 other months or 5 other months and 30 days.
But there's also,
I
think
disagree.
about the fact that sometimes, so there's the mother-in-law suite. So you have somebody living on site, but then you also, like, so some of these properties, they have like an adjacent apartment. Like on my street, the person that lives across the street has like their main house and then they have a mother-in-law suite. And so they rent out the mother-in-law suite. So that's like an example.
Or you have a snowbird, somebody who wants to stay here from late October through, I don't know, beginning of May, and then they're gone. And they'd like to be in Warwick for those months, they wanna be here, you know, or I guess I have it backwards, they wanna be here over the summer, they don't wanna be here over the winter.
Yeah.
And for those few months over the winter, you know, November through April, whatever it is, the property's available for short-term rentals.
Right.
You could also, this is also a way, for example, somebody who lives out of state, they're renting out their property, they might have a mother-in-law suite or something, and they may have an agreement with the person that rents the property that they can get a lower rent if they also serve as their agent for like the Airbnb. And so we wouldn't want to preclude those types of, I mean, we can't think of every possible scenario, but we wouldn't want to preclude those situations that achieve the goals that we had laid out.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of, that's my thinking.
Shall I walk you through the other changes, or do you want to talk about some of the big ticket items first, or what do you want to do?
While we're still on this topic, one of the things that Tulsa, Oklahoma does, according to Airbnb, is they have two categories of short-term rentals. One is principal use short-term rental, and the other is accessory use. So the principal use is that the short-term rental is the principal use, and they don't have, there's no, it's not a primary resident of the household that owns it. The accessory is that situation. And there are different, I mean, they don't explain what the rules are. I think we can find out, but there are different rules for both those situations. So, but that's a deviation from what it sounds like we're trying to do, which is to force it basically being occupied by the owner or their agent.
Well, I could probably pull up Tulsa's code provisions on E-code if the board wants to see those.
Yeah, I would like to see it.
I mean, that was one of the very few things of value I found in the brochures.
But
Is the,
it does sound like
Beautiful.
from our coordination that we do want to, like, part of what the goal is.
Rentals.
Is to limit those primary use, like Airbnbs, right? For the reasons that we had articulated.
You
But
probably can't say that.
for the reasons we had articulated, because for like the risks that are associated with them, you know, so you mitigate the risk around them.
I
But-
think this
but
is a
you're
broad, this is a broader kind of scope, in a way, by having those two categories. Correct.
Well, it gives you the option of having different rules for each one of those.
Right.
And, you know, I think, you know, I mean, we want to protect neighborhoods, clearly, from abuses relative to rentals in the neighborhood. Clearly, the best way to do that is to keep the owner of the property invested in it. But at the same time, that goes against what the Dormant Commerce Clause says. And if we're just trying to protect whether somebody lives there 6 months or 6 months of the year or 12 months of the year or no months of the year, our objectives are to be able to hold the owner of the property responsible should anything go wrong in what is probably infrequent circumstances. I don't know how many rental units the town has, but, you know, they're still coming up with, you know, this property here and that property there, but, you know, if there are a lot of them being rented out, then it becomes a small component of it. And if we have access to an agent, whether the person owns the property and lives there for 0 months, 6 months, or 12 months, doesn't seem to, you know, matter in our ability to get effective representation and response.
Just by making people register, you're going to be exercising some degree of supervision over how your short-term rentals operate. Because if somebody has a bad short-term rental, you're gonna pull their registration license and say you can't do this anymore, whether it's owner-occupied or not owner-occupied. The owner-occupied requirement is like a second layer on top of registration. It's like, yeah, you gotta register whether you live there or you don't live there or whatever it is. But in addition to that, the general feeling is, whether it's grounded or not, that people who have skin in the game, that actually reside on the property, know the neighbors, are going to be more careful in who they rent out to. And you're not gonna see the crazy bachelor party or wedding party or reveal party, whatever it is, with 150 people showing up and, raising Cain. How necessary that second level is, how far you wanna go in terms of, making it, I won't say burdensome, but complicated. It's your decision, of course, but just keep in mind, it's kind of that's the belt that goes with the suspenders. The registration gets you off the ground to begin with, and after that, you're kind of being extra cautious. I don't know how much of a concern it is that people be bad owners here,
Yeah, I mean, I know we're trying to prepare for the worst-case scenario. But in my mind, too, we haven't had any issues. I think that we would have heard, that they would have presented themselves if there were real problems. And because it's an activity that's being done. So, that's one thing. And also that I see like the big party venues are more in the larger spreads, which are in the town, so.
So that brings us around full circle. Do you want to consider getting rid of the owner occupancy requirement and just sticking with, you gotta have an agent who's at all times available within 30 minutes?
I feel strongly against that option, and
It's your decision.
I'm surprised we keep coming around to the exact same point, which seems, time and time again. The R2 residential neighborhoods are zoned like that for a reason. The expectation that someone is living in a community. Having someone who can be a professional short-term rental host, could live anywhere in the world and find anyone just on paper as an agent. You could call, there's any number of professional agents, right, as we've seen in the Greenwood Lake area, who just do this for some, side cash.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're a professional, short-term rental host, you could just Google who the agents are for short-term rentals in the area, find someone and say, hey, I'll pay you what your rate is. Then where's the quality of life for the neighbors
No,
around residential?
I understand
So
where you're coming from.
that's why I strongly feel that it should be owner occupied in the residential areas. And we've already made a carve out in the central business district to be more lenient, because those in central business district, they have an expectation of businesses being around them.
Right.
And just maybe just a reminder to the board of part of the conversation that we had last time is that the residential zoning does allow for like a B&B style thing where a bed and breakfast where you have it owner occupancy, but it does not allow for like hotel. So a hotel would be like a situation where you don't have it owner occupied on site. Whereas, so this is kind of what Tom is proposing is more consistent with the zoning. So that was where we ended up last time, is that it was more consistent with the zoning, and then by making the change in the central business district, that was also consistent with the zoning. So this code, like as it's currently written, is more consistent.
Well, okay then.
I mean, we have properties now that are not owner occupied, that are being rented on a very frequent basis in residential neighborhoods
Yeah, there's about
without
30
issues,
in the village, it looks like.
that are sold. But can you tell whether they're,
There's 20 that are whole homes. I don't know how often they're,
but
and that's only Airbnb, so I don't know whether
Right.
there's other thingadoogies that we could use.
Like Furbo or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's about 30 properties on Airbnb that are in the village. And then about 20 of them are entire homes. So I'm assuming that the other ones, because there are 0 only rooms, so I'm assuming that the others are like accessory structures. Or like, like small. um,
So I think if we go by where we've gotten this thus far, and had the owner occupancy requirement, then the whole principal use, accessory use is not really,
An issue because
An
it's
issue.
covered. Yeah.
so if you want to lead us
All
down.
right,
Yeah.
if we're done with that, I'll walk
Yep.
you through the changes, the other
Yep.
changes that is to say. All right, so the first thing I did was I added a definition of agent. Now, there's a little bleed over to the registered agent, but I didn't want to have such a big paragraph devoted to one thing. I know it's a little awkward, but it works in my opinion. So we start out with the term agent. Any person who has written authority from the property owner to enter, care for, and control a building in regard to short-term rentals and act on behalf of the owner in regard to short-term rentals of the building. So if you're the agent, you can act for the owner in everything. I made a couple of cosmetic changes to the term bedroom. We had SQ period feet in some lines and square feet in other lines, so I made it all with the word square written out. And at the end, it says, last sentence is, living space shall adhere to the current property maintenance code of the state of New York, and I added the words, in the village code of the village of Warwick. Probably unnecessary, but I'd rather have it in there than not.
What page are you on, Steve?
Page 2. Still in definitions.
Okay.
Owner occupied, we just discussed the changes that we would make there. We'll get rid of resident under the term registered resident agent and delete the word consecutive as to the months. Registered agent, likewise on page 3, we're gonna rephrase it as Carly had suggested. Regulation of, I'm in 115-3 now, regulation of short-term rentals. This is the provision regarding the central business zone. I added a paragraph reading, only owner-occupied properties may be used for short-term rentals. Owner-occupied, of course, having been defined to include agent-occupied. Provided, however, that properties located in the central business zone used for short-term rentals need not be owner-occupied if the registered, we'll get rid of the word resident, if the registered agent resides within, and we're gonna have to change that. It said resides within at least 30 minutes travel time. We'll have to make that, is available to respond. Words to that effect.
In person, right, I think it's
To
this.
respond in person. Within 30 minutes of being notified, etc. But it'll mirror what we did for registered agent. So that's the carve out for the CB. In 115.3 sub 4, again, just a cosmetic change. We have a provision that says HOA policies in village developments supersede short-term rental STR village policy. And I thought rather than HOA and STR, we'd better have the words homeowners association and short-term rental written out.
And the
Can
other
we
thing there.
say, oh, I'm sorry. Provide,
Go ahead, Carly, you first.
provided that the homeowner association policy is more stringent than the,
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
yeah,
Well,
so
they
it's
can-
whichever
They
is,
can prohibit them. Oh, you don't want it to override the
Well,
other way.
there could be
you
a
don't want it
policy
to
that says
override it the other way, yeah.
Okay, that's a good point.
it's allowed.
That's a
Yeah.
good point.
What's the stance on condos? For some reason, I thought that New York State dictated that condos were not Airbnb.
I think that's my recollection from what Boris has said, yeah, the state law.
Well, multiple family developments, you can't, the idea of being apartments, of course, you can't have short-term rentals in.
Yeah.
I don't know if condos would be considered, you can own anything in condominium form, so I'm not sure what the rule is there. I mean, if it's a multiple dwellings, it's gonna be by virtue
Well,
of
okay,
that.
so a multiple dwelling is what, more than 2 units, right?
2 units,
In a
yeah.
building.
Yeah. But you could own single-family homes as condos
Right.
if you wanted to, so
Right.
I don't know if there's a separate condo rule or if we're talking about
I think we're
multiple
talking
family.
multiple
Yeah,
residents.
yeah, no, it's not allowed.
Okay.
Registration of properties. I just did a very small semantical change there. We read previously registration of short-term rentals. I changed it to read, a short-term rental registration application shall be completed by the owner or the registered agent, submitting to the village a registration form, et cetera, et cetera. In sub 1 under 115.4, I changed agent to registered agent because now we have 2 terms, not just agent.
Why would we want the registered agent to have the authority to file that application? I would think it
he's
should be
acting for
the
the
owner,
owner.
period.
Okay, so you don't want agents to be able to file, you want the owner to actually sign off.
Yeah, right, I mean, it just seems that we're giving the registered agent a little too much authority with that.
That's fine. So we'll take our registered agent out of the beginning, we'll leave it in sub 1.
Yeah, because if they're someone that has like power of attorney or some kind of fiduciary, whatever, that becomes like an owner
It's the same as if the
legally,
owner
so then you
signed
don't
it.
have to say
Was a
registered
practical-
agent. Yeah, yeah.
As a practical matter, what would probably happen is the agent fills out the form, and then the owner signs it. Which leads me to my next point on this, 115-4, sub 11. The completed form must be notarized. You really want to make people notarize their forms? Some people, it's not a big deal, like a notary at hand. Other people have to go to a bank or,
Is there a risk of anybody ever registering somebody else's property for, or like if it's an owner, if it's not notarized?
well, it's got to be signed by the owner, we just established that.
Mhm,
You're
yeah,
talking
but
about
if it's-
forging the signature?
Yeah, I mean, is that a reasonable? I'm just asking a question.
If they're bringing the form to Village Hall, we have
Well, I
5
guess
notaries in the
If
building.
you rented out your property and then your tenant, either with a sublet provision in their lease or without it, undertook to make some short-term rentals on their own, it could happen. If you have sufficient notaries here, maybe it's just not a big deal. They bring
Yeah,
them in and then-
yeah.
All right.
It might be good to.
Yeah, I don't mind that added layer of protection.
Okay. Grant of permission, I'm gonna have to delete this next change. I put in upon submittal of a completed application for short-term, oh, maybe not, short-term rentals. The owner, I had, or registered agent shall contact the building inspector to schedule an inspection. You don't mind if the agent schedules the inspection?
That should
Yeah.
be fine.
That's fine.
Okay.
As long as it gets done.
And I changed in the remainder of it, there's only 2 other changes, the word agent to registered agent, because as I said earlier, I had added in the definitions agent as distinct from registered agent, so that's just a semantic change. Sub 2 and sub 3, same thing, I just changed the word agent to registered agent. 115-7, again, there are 2 appearances of the word agent, which I changed to registered agent. You're gonna see registered resident agent in there, but I'm deleting that term throughout as we.
So Steve, I'm sorry, if we go back to 115-5, or maybe this is where it would go, I do think we should probably put something in there regarding parking. I looked at the village's zoning and kind of definition for bed and breakfast lodging establishments is what it's called. And parking for the bed and breakfast shall be 1 off-street parking space per guest room, in addition to the primary use.
This is in the village code?
This is in the village zoning code.
Okay.
1 off-street parking space per guest room in addition to the primary use. I'm not sure what that latter part means.
Well, it's like if you have a house, and then you also have the bed and breakfast, the portion of your house that you're using for your own purposes would be subject to the regular residential code.
It's primary, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're renting out 2
Did I get
rooms or
that
whatever,
right?
I'm not, I have to look at the set codes.
Okay.
Sounds
Okay.
right.
Alright, so you wanna add a parking requirement of 1 space per room?
per
bedroom.
bedroom.
Off-street,
Well, bedroom, yeah, that's what I'm.
off-street only?
It says off-street, yeah.
So you're wanting to create wherever possible consistency with the bed and breakfast requirements.
Yes.
I'm gonna apply that to the CB district too.
That's different though, because the hotel, what are the hotel requirements?
It's probably might be more.
should we then reference rather than creating duplicate, if we want to?
Yeah,
Should we
the
say,
pointer.
reference, say, those in the residential area will be subject to the parking requirements, like,
Yeah.
As
for a
captured
bed and
in-
breakfast, and then if you're in the CBD, then you're subject to requirements of a hotel?
What's your off-street parking situation like in the CB? Is there a lot of spaces, or is it tight, or?
I'll find it.
Pretty tight. But wouldn't parking be part of the
The village
application
code.
requirements
I'm
as
sorry.
well?
I'm sorry?
Wouldn't parking requirements be part of the application as well? In order to get a permit?
We would have to add that to 115.4, sure. To mirror if you're gonna put it into 115.5. But.
Yeah,
And then,
I would
I don't
like
wanna
to
get
see
too
it.
far away from this, I really hadn't thought about it, but, so the yin and the yang here is that if you have plenty of off-street spaces in the CB, then it's just not a big deal. But if you don't have sufficient parking, then it is a big deal, but properties in the CB might not have their own off-street parking. I don't know what your situation is
Yeah.
for private parking lots there. And if you start saying you can only have your short-term rental if you provide us with off-street parking, and they're like, we're a village property, we go wall to wall on our lot, we don't have
Yeah.
off-street parking, you're creating a problem, you see.
Yeah.
I would say it should be consistent with the zoning law, but we should also provide some clarity there.
Well, I can look into the issue and report back to you, I don't know what else to tell you on that.
Yeah, I think we have to pay attention to this because I know one municipality, this is their biggest struggle they're having.
We do also, though, have, like, transit from the city here.
That's
We
right.
have we have New Jersey Transit. I mean, I do think, like,
People are not coming in cars, they're coming off the bus.
not always, yeah. I mean, I do think, like, long-term, I know we want to do a parking study, and then long-term, you know, potentially there will be lower need for parking as time goes on. But it makes sense, at least for the time being, to just maintain code consistency, I think.
All right, and I'll talk to Boris too.
I mean, there is designated municipal lots with 12-hour limits, so that's always the possibility. So if your Airbnb is on Main Street, that would probably be the only opportunity you would have.
Yeah, I hear you. Look, if they're available on-street spots and they're closer to the building, people are gonna park on the street.
But they're
closer to the
metered,
building.
and there's only a 2-hour limit,
Ah, even at night?
or 3-hour. No, they can park at night, as long as
Because
it's
that's when they're
6
gonna,
o'clock.
that's probably when they're gonna be there, you
Mhm.
know, so.
And I would imagine some of the apartments are attached to a permitted spot, right?
some not, you know.
Could we, in the code, just reference for residential areas, they should be subject to, you know, code requirements associated with the bed and breakfast lodging establishments, and then for, those in the central business district, they would be subject to the hotel?
You could, I don't know what those requirements are though.
Yeah, it just says, it's, oh, I just lost it. Parking for the primary residence shall be in this is for the bed and breakfast, shall be in accordance with the Village of Warwick zoning law. Parking for the bed and breakfast use shall be 1 off-street parking space per guest room. Yeah, parking shall be that of asphalt or other material in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. Creation of new parking within 15 feet of a property in residential use is prohibited, and use of existing parking may be utilized to satisfy the requirements of this paragraph.
So it allows for the use of municipal parking lots, per se. Right.
Again, if you want me to draft a section on parking, I'm happy to do that. I'd have to look at your code and
Yeah.
see what it says and then.
I'm just curious
add
what
it to those two
what
sections.
the CB parking
Yeah, it's just.
would be, if, or what the hotel requirement is.
It's on page 191. It's interesting. I'm not seeing. I wonder if
I don't know if there,
the parking requirements are just for the CBD in general.
I think they may be.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any.
I didn't think there was any real
parking
hotel
requirement
requirement.
for the hotel.
Yeah, since we,
Did you see this? Do you want to look at it?
Yeah, I'd be very interested to see that.
It's beautiful.
Who published this?
Airbnb.
Airbnb.
They were at Conference of Mayors with a table.
Yeah, NICOM was supposed to be good this year. I've just got some people came back from it. Yeah.
It
Oh,
doesn't
yeah, I
seem
saw
too
your,
bad.
I saw your whole crew. Village and town.
Yeah. Well, they couldn't go to AOT, so they wanted to go. NICOM might be better sometimes, I gotta tell you.
So I'm sorry, Carly.
I don't know what I was saying.
Thank you.
Not of use of. That the Airbnb thing wasn't very. It wasn't bad. It was like positively. They don't want to alienate too badly.
So one of the issues that comes up with them is that municipalities who enact hotel taxes want to have them collect the tax for them, basically.
Yeah,
Did they talk about how to get an agreement with them?
They talked about that was an opportunity and that they do that. And they also indicated that now they can put their registration number right in their Airbnb listing so that the municipalities can confirm that they've been registered appropriately.
Great, that's gonna be very helpful, thank you.
So Steve, I don't know if you want to reference this, but the section is 145-120.2. Bed and breakfast lodging establishments.
All right, are we doing anything with hotels too, or we're just sticking the bed and
I'm still looking to see if that is expressed in there, and I don't think it is.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything.
Well, we,
There's got to be something like.
Well, your code was, I don't mean, any disrespect, it was kind of uniquely written. You had your bulk requirements and use requirements written out in sections as opposed to in bulk tables, and then you incorporated bulk tables following the, and I think use tables too, following the sections that were written out. So they're kind of in the middle of the code instead of at the end of the code. You know what I mean? As far as the zoning goes. Most codes just flip to the end, and that's where the use of
Okay.
bulk tables are.
Yeah, and the code also has like maximum. I thought that we had like maximums. We didn't have, or it wasn't. There was some freedom in there.
so I think we have clarity on how to address parking out of the business zone. The question is, how would we define it for the business district?
I'm gonna have to prepare another section. I'll do a very brief, I don't want your bill or anything, memo to you on parking. Like I said, I'll touch base with Boris,
I got it.
and then
Yeah.
I'll say this is the section, unless Carly's gonna forever on it.
Yeah, it's page 69, table 61, parking requirements. Residential, 1.5 per dwelling unit. And then for lodging, it's 1 per bedroom. So it's the same
Yeah, okay.
for
Okay.
bed
It's
and
easier.
breakfast and, yeah. Sorry, I'll turn that off.
But in the B&B, they talk about off-street.
That's why I asked what you wanna do with the CB district. I mean, the rest of the village, I guess,
Yeah,
you
this
know,
doesn't say.
it's gonna depend on the circumstances on it,
Right.
but, you can put a waiver provision in your code if you want in regard to parking. You know, you come to the town board and ask for a waiver from parking and show that you have sufficient parking off-site.
There's also the shared parking factor.
Right.
Parking for 2 dissimilar functions within any pair of adjacent blocks may be shared and is strongly encouraged. So it doesn't have to be dedicated parking for the CBD.
Well, I'm not sure, I would think the idea there would be you have a restaurant or something like that that's gonna have evening, usually it's a diner or something, patrons coming, and then you have maybe a business which has people only there till 5 o'clock. You'd say, well, you could share these parking spaces because the one use is only gonna use them in the morning, and the other use is only gonna use them in the evening. But if you have uses that would use them at the same time, I wouldn't think that would apply.
Yeah, it actually provides the ratios. So like, for example, lodging and residential would be like 1.1, office and residential. This is on page 69. So, I mean, I think we need to refer them to the parking code. Actually, that's easier than just trying to say it's bed and breakfast code or the hotel
Yeah.
code, because the table 61 parking requirements and this section of the code is parking standards under
Well, that's
design standards.
certainly an acceptable thing to do, and you're probably often going to be dealing with pretty sophisticated property owners, but even sophisticated property owners, and it's just a consideration, you do what you want, of course, I mean, would, I think, prefer to see the number set forth in this section, what do I gotta do for off-street parking in general, as opposed to saying, well, go look in the other sections of the code and figure it out, you know, so you might wanna, you know, put it directly into this section, just for ease of use by people who are coming to you for permits. You know, we're not, maybe.
You
we
say
wanna-
one
Well,
space per bedroom as is consistent with
Well,
the zoning code.
But what if
Other
for the
You're either
application,
gonna
we
want one
just
space or
include
not.
that section of the code? Because the reason that I
Great
wouldn't
point.
articulate it is because if we decide to update, it's best to cross-reference, because as we move through time and we update portions of the code, we don't want to have internal inconsistencies. So if we are referencing a specific part of the code, then we update that, and then it ripples through everything else without us having to update 1,000 different things. So we could just print that page out and include it.
Yeah, so like in the new planning and zoning application, we reference specific sections of the code and make it easy for someone to see.
Mm-hmm,
This would be the same.
exactly, yeah.
Good call, Carly, I like that.
We did that for the film code too.
So just to be clear, you don't wanna just cross-reference, you wanna say specific number of spaces, but you also wanna have language.
I think I'm advocating that we just cross-reference.
So you do just
Yeah.
wanna cross-reference, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes it easier, right?
And then we'll make it easy in the application itself.
Yeah,
Yes.
we'll just print it down and make it part of the application.
So code, having a pointer to another piece of code, that all kind of makes sense in a weird tangle way. But if you look at the application, we'll spell it out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. So that's it. The only other changes were changing from agent to registered resident agent, which now will be just registered
Look at that
agent.
place.
And there were only like 3 more changes to that. The
Beautiful.
law itself was otherwise pretty much complete. So the change regarding the agent's availability has to be incorporated. And the change, which there's gonna be some assembly required here. I know you guys are trying to make it easy, but just trust me on this. I'm gonna have to look into it before I draft it. For the parking, it has to be incorporated. We were talking about sections 115-4 and 115-5 for the parking. So unless we need a definition or something like that, those are the sections I'm gonna put in.
115-4 or 5?
The application form and then the grant of permits. Because when you apply, you should state what your off-street parking is if there's an off-street parking requirement.
Good job, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of want to read through this and
The Airbnb
Well, we're
thing.
not at the point of introducing the law. We
No.
think of something
Okay,
else, which,
yeah.
you know,
yeah, there's
We're
a
we're not
couple-
inconsistent with it. Like, I disagree. It says it calls for automatic renewal.
No.
No.
I
Reasonable
was
fees.
reading.
Yeah.
Monroe actually has some things I want to look at more too.
But we don't have the ability to issue taxes.
Right.
So all the stuff that they have on that is not applicable to us.
taxes required authorizing legislation from Albany. I know they were working on something to make it statewide. I don't remember if it
Yeah.
passed or it didn't pass or what. I know in Cornwall, they just asked for authorizing legislation and got it.
Goshen, I believe, got it also.
Yeah, yeah. But you don't always get it. Across the river, they're trying to get it, and sometimes it just doesn't get through. Depends on who's asking sometimes, you know.
And they are promoting requirements that, like, an authorized representative be available 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
But what
Yes.
is to be available?
I saw that in Monroe's too. I'm gonna read through theirs.
That doesn't
Here,
say
where
that you
it
have
says-
to
How long
respond within a
ago
half
is
an
exactly,
hour. and,
It's not the same.
You know, if
It's different, yeah.
if it's a plumbing leak and you can get a plumber there in an hour, why do you need to be there?
Well, we say is able to respond on site. We don't actually say must respond on site, though. So there's some degree of, like, judgment.
If they called a plumber and didn't show up personally, you wouldn't look to pull their
That's right,
permit.
that's right, exactly, yeah.
All right.
So, we'll keep this under discussion for the next meeting. I don't think we need a full-blown work session, but maybe we'll be ready to have a public hearing.
Let me
Very
circulate the
fun.
draft to all of you, take a look at it, and if you have issues with it, you may not be. If it comes back and you're like, that looks good, I'll give you a resolution to set a public hearing on it, sure.
Okay.
I feel like there's like a really logical flow with the way that this has been set up and ensuring continuity with like existing zoning. I think that that's
I agree.
like rational and,
Well, short-term rental isn't just a hot topic these days, although certainly it is, as more and more people use them to, provide themselves lodging for visiting. It's also one of those issues which you're gonna feel, I'm sure you all do, the real pull between how can we make this, easier for our property owner residents to, use their property for, a means of making more income and allowing more people to come into the village, because it's good economically. And the other side of the coin, which is these things can turn ugly and there could be a problem
That's
with
correct.
them. And where do you draw the line as to what's appropriate? So you're gonna wrestle with it a little, and you've been wrestling with it a
months.
little bit,
Months.
before you come up with what you want to enact, or at least you hold a public hearing, we'll see. You may wind up making yet more changes, depending on what the public says.
Mm-hmm.
So-
You gotta have good enforcement requirements and also penalties.
Well,
Yeah.
that's another, the penalties are certainly important as far as that goes, because when push comes to shove, that's the teeth in your law. But, short-term rentals are notoriously difficult from an enforcement standpoint. Sometimes you just don't get the information about violations I've had people come in and say, these people have been doing these crazy things for, you know, the last half year. I'm like, well, why didn't you complain about it before?
yeah,
How's the
I
building
mean,
inspector
right.
supposed to know?
Right.
And people don't like to complain about their neighbors. Sometimes it's short-lived, even though it may be, you know, kind of extreme. And then once you find out, there's still the issue of citing people and, you know, proving your case. It can be, you know, you get where you want to be at the end of the day, but only sometimes after a prolonged, you know, vigilance and enforcement. So just because you write down the book saying you can't do this, well, you don't need me to tell you, you know, well, you know.
Yeah. Thank you.
So could I have a motion to close the work session?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Did you get a second?
Aye. Oh, second.
Oh, second, please. Aye. Oh,
Is that an HP Smart?
oh, look who's here. Chief.
Mary, do you mind?
Oh, yes.
Hello.
Hi, Chief.
Hi, Chief.
Hi.
We had a work session, that's why we're looking so comfortable
Just
here.
Waiting for you.
I don't know, comfortable?
What's that?
Comfortable?
I'm comfortable, okay.